Oh, your son's 13.
He's 13.
First of all, I want to assign a copy to him.
Please do. Please
For
do.
me, this was...
Blake's promotional decisions surrounding sensitive topics, such as marketing a film about abuse in a tone-deaf manner while tying it to her alcohol brand, were widely criticized and added to the perception that her priorities leaned towards self-interest rather than ethical responsibility. Reynolds' involvement further complicated matters, with reports of him allegedly inserting snide references to Baldoni into unrelated projects, a move widely perceived as petty and unprofessional. The public and the courts watched as a high-profile couple's attempts to control every narrative, every detail, and every perception spectacularly collapsed under the weight of evidence, testimony, and digital records. Each revelation deepened the narrative of manipulation and ethical lapses. Blake's repeated contradictions, selective disclosures, and public theatrics exposed her as self-serving and calculating. Her attempts to shift blame, weaponize her relationships, and maintain a heroic public image failed repeatedly, leaving her reputation fractured and her credibility in tatters. Even previously loyal fans began to see through the carefully curated persona, recognizing the contrast between her public statements and the evidence revealed in court documents and leaked communications. In the process, she has created a cautionary example of how fame, influence, and privilege offer no immunity from accountability, particularly when deceit and manipulation are exposed to the relentless gaze of the public. The fallout continues to grow, with brand partnerships stalled, industry insiders distancing themselves, and the court proceedings maintaining constant attention. Each attempt to deflect responsibility only reinforces the public's understanding of her role in the saga. If the legal outcome results in financial penalties, they could deliver a final blow to her career, but even without monetary consequences, the reputational damage is profound and likely permanent. Blake's attempts to present herself as a champion, a victim, or a feminist hero have been repeatedly dismantled by evidence, leaving her legacy uncertain and her influence drastically diminished. What began as a professional dispute on a film set has spiraled into a massive public spectacle. Blake Lively is now widely seen not as a victim or a heroine, but as the architect of her own downfall, a figure whose relentless attempts to manipulate, control, and fabricate narratives have left her exposed. While the saga is far from over, her battle for public perception is effectively lost. The legal, social, and professional consequences continue to mount, serving as a cautionary tale for Hollywood and the public alike. No amount of fame, fortune, or high-profile alliances can shield someone from the consequences of deception and manipulation in the digital age. This approach was widely criticized as insensitive and exploitative, reinforcing the perception that her priorities were centered more on marketing and self-promotion than on genuinely respecting the film's serious subject matter. As a result, public trust continued to erode. At the same time, the legal conflict intensified, with Justin Baldoni filing a countersuit that alleged a coordinated effort by Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and their public relations team to damage his reputation. According to those claims, this effort was supported by attempts to influence scripts, alter scenes, and assert control over key production decisions. To critics, this behavior did not align with the image of someone seeking justice, but rather suggested an aggressive attempt to dominate the creative and professional environment. Reynolds' involvement appeared to deepen the controversy further. Reports suggested that he supported Lively's position during disputes and allegedly pushed for changes that aligned with their shared perspective. When those efforts were resisted, tensions escalated, contributing to a growing perception that he was not merely a bystander but an active participant. Once the legal battle became public, his vocal support for Lively only intensified scrutiny, tying his reputation more closely to the unfolding situation. As the case developed, it increasingly came to be viewed as a high-stakes clash involving power, influence, and narrative control. What may have begun as a professional disagreement evolved into a broader conflict over credibility and public perception. Critics pointed to patterns such as selective leaks, shifting narratives, and strategic use of legal actions as evidence of an attempt to control both the production and the story being told about it. Rather than strengthening their position, these efforts appeared to backfire, leaving both Lively and Reynolds facing mounting criticism, legal challenges, and damage to their carefully built public images. The situation became even more complicated as additional private communications surfaced. These messages, according to observers, sometimes appeared to contradict public claims, fueling accusations of inconsistency. In some instances, Lively reportedly praised Baldoni's work privately while publicly framing the situation in a far more negative light. Such contrasts amplified skepticism and led many to question the reliability of her narrative. Her legal requests for extensive personal records further added to the controversy, with critics interpreting them as an overreach that raised ethical concerns. Attempts to involve others in the dispute also failed to gain traction, References to fellow actresses such as Jenny Slate and Isabella Ferrer did not produce the support her claims seemed to anticipate. On the contrary, positive remarks about Baldoni's professionalism from those individuals weakened her position and contributed to the perception that her legations lacked broader corroboration. Meanwhile, public reaction grew increasingly intense. Online discussions dissected every new development, and what had once been a largely favorable public image for Lively began to shift dramatically. Some commentators drew comparisons to other high-profile controversies involving conflicting narratives, though each case remained distinct in its details. As more information became available, even some initial supporters grew quieter, reflecting a broader uncertainty about the situation. Baldoni, on the other hand, gained visible support from colleagues and industry insiders who spoke positively about his character and conduct. This contrast further complicated the narrative, making it harder for Lively's claims to maintain credibility in the court of public opinion. His legal response, reportedly seeking substantial damages, signaled a clear intent to challenge the accusations and defend his reputation with significant force. Throughout all of this, questions about celebrity influence and accountability became central to the conversation. Observers noted how fame, connections, and carefully managed public personas can shape perception, but also how quickly those constructs can be challenged when conflicting evidence emerges. The controversy highlighted broader concerns about workplace dynamics, the use of media to influence narratives, and the ethical responsibilities of those in positions of power. Even promotional decisions unrelated to the legal battle drew criticism, with some accusing Lively of mishandling sensitive themes in ways that felt disconnected from their seriousness. This added another layer to the backlash, reinforcing the perception that image management was being prioritized over authenticity. As scrutiny intensified, both Lively and Reynolds found themselves under increasing pressure. With their reputations facing sustained challenges from multiple directions, what had once seemed like a controlled narrative evolved into a complex and unpredictable situation, shaped by legal developments, public reaction, and ongoing revelations. In the end, the unfolding saga serves as a reminder of how quickly circumstances can change in the public eye. In an industry where image and influence are deeply intertwined, even well-established figures are not immune to the consequences of controversy. The outcome of the legal battle will ultimately be decided in court, but regardless of the verdict, the broader discussion it has sparked about power, credibility, and accountability will likely continue long after the case itself is resolved. The legal ramifications facing Blake Lively are severe, with the lawsuit threatening to cost her millions and potentially irreparably damage her standing in Hollywood, once celebrated alongside Ryan Reynolds as the industry's ideal power couple. Projecting a picture-perfect family image, the carefully cultivated persona they presented has been laid bare and dismantled. Social media, court filings, and widespread public scrutiny have exposed them as a pair willing to manipulate narratives, leverage their brand, and bend the truth to maintain appearances. Fans, peers, and industry insiders alike are beginning to see them not as charming icons but as figures who place image above ethics and integrity. The once untouchable image of Blake and Ryan has been destroyed, leaving a cautionary tale about how quickly privilege and influence can be undermined by mismanagement, deception, and the relentless scrutiny of the modern media landscape. The scandal underscores the dangerous intersection of celebrity, power, and public perception. Blake's attempts to control narratives, manipulate colleagues, and weaponize personal relationships spectacularly backfired, exposing a pattern of behavior prioritizing self-interest over truth or accountability. Ryan's participation, intended as support, instead reinforced perceptions of complicity and poor judgment. Meanwhile, Baldoni's assertive legal response, paired with the exposure of communications and supporting evidence, reshaped the narrative entirely, providing the public with a clear view of the dynamics at play. What began as a professional dispute has morphed into a profound lesson in accountability, demonstrating how fragile even the most meticulously managed public images can be in the digital age. Court documents and private communications revealed contradictions that consistently undermined Blake's claims. Attempts to portray herself as a victim collapsed under scrutiny, with every selective leak, edited text, and half-truth further eroding credibility. Her repeated efforts to frame Baldoni as a villain, including citing other actresses allegedly affected by his behavior, fell apart when those individuals publicly defended him. Similarly, her attempts to cast Ryan as a loyal enforcer only amplified criticism, highlighting a pattern of manipulative behavior rather than genuine concern. Public perception shifted rapidly. What was once a beloved, picture-perfect star had become someone willing to manipulate the system, colleagues, and even personal relationships to maintain control. The saga has also illustrated the consequences of celebrity overreach. I feel genuinely fortunate to have spent so many years working in this industry, especially one that is as competitive and ever-changing as entertainment. Opportunities like these don't come easily, and longevity is something I never take for granted. However, what I've always valued most isn't just the work itself, but the chance to collaborate with people who are not only skilled but also respectful and grounded. That's why it's disheartening to witness situations where individuals who once publicly praised each other, spoke highly in interviews, and projected strong professional bonds suddenly turn against one another in such a hostile and public way. It raises questions about authenticity, integrity, and what really happens behind closed doors, even if only a portion of the claims being circulated are accurate. The controversy surrounding Blake Lively has grown into something far more serious than a typical celebrity dispute. What initially seemed like industry chatter has escalated into a highly publicized situation, drawing attention from media personalities, including Piers, who has claimed there is substantial evidence that challenges the narrative presented so far. At the center of it all is an unfolding story that suggests a complex dynamic involving power, influence, and control within major productions. Reports indicate that Blake may have exercised a level of authority that extended well beyond her responsibilities as an actress, influencing creative decisions such as script revisions, wardrobe choices, and overall direction. As more details emerge, what was once dismissed as speculation is now being examined more closely by both the public and industry insiders. The situation intensified during her reported conflict with director Justin Baldoni, where disagreements over creative control appear to have triggered a broader dispute. Blake responded by filing a lawsuit, presenting herself as someone who had been mistreated, and initially, there was an expectation that public support would follow. However, as additional information surfaced, observers began pointing out inconsistencies in her claims, leading to a shift in perception. Particularly controversial were allegations that certain pieces of communication had been selectively edited before being shared, removing context that could alter their meaning. In response, Baldoni released more complete versions of these exchanges, which appeared to contradict parts of Blake's account and revealed moments of cooperation and mutual respect that had not been previously acknowledged. This development marked a turning point, as it introduced doubt and prompted wider scrutiny. At the same time, Piers used his platform to question the situation openly, highlighting what he described as contradictions and raising concerns about the possibility of narrative manipulation. As the story gained traction, public opinion began to evolve, and the image Blake had carefully cultivated over the years started to face significant challenges. Efforts to maintain control of the narrative continued, including interviews and expanded public relations strategies, but they seemed to struggle against the growing wave of skepticism. There were also reports suggesting that Blake attempted to rely on high-profile connections, including her friendship with Taylor Swift, to reinforce her credibility. However, insiders indicated that Swift chose to distance herself from the controversy, avoiding involvement and signaling a reluctance to be associated with the situation. Despite mounting criticism and setbacks, Blake persisted in defending her position, doubling down on her claims and presenting herself as standing up for what she believed to be right. What began as a contained disagreement has now evolved into a complex and highly visible controversy, with multiple perspectives, conflicting accounts, and significant public interest. Careers, reputations, and professional relationships are all being tested, and the situation continues to unfold in a way that highlights the fragile balance between image, influence, and accountability in the entertainment industry. Yet with every move she made, the perception of manipulation only seemed to grow stronger rather than fade. Her actions, ranging from attempting to control on-set decisions to the alleged selective leaking of information, drew increasing the scrutiny and painted a picture that many interpreted as a consistent pattern of prioritizing personal image over transparency or accountability. What may have initially been dismissed as strategic damage control gradually began to look, to critics, like a calculated effort to shape reality itself. With the added pressure of public commentary from Piers, the counterclaims and evidence presented by Justin Baldoni, and the internet's relentless analysis, Blake Lively found her carefully curated persona facing unprecedented strain. The polished image that once defined her public identity began to fracture, leaving her legacy and professional credibility under intense question. As the situation escalated, what unfolded in official court documents appeared, to many observers, to diverge sharply from her public narrative. These filings highlighted inconsistencies and raised questions about the evolution of her claims over time. Her version of events seemed to shift, and critics pointed to her difficulty in explaining why extensive access to Baldoni's private records, including years of emails, many unrelated to the project, was necessary if her case was already supported by strong evidence. To some, this request appeared less like a standard legal step and more like an attempt to uncover or construct damaging material. Meanwhile, Baldoni did not remain passive. He responded with a countersuit that expanded the scope of the conflict, reportedly naming not